All right, we're all set. So welcome to Funding Your Graduate Education. I know many of you have likely watched the other video where I talked about terminology at VCU and the different terms that we use: graduate assistant, graduate student worker, and hold on one second. Please make sure you mute. Sorry, everyone. And so please refer to that. We won't be covering those topics tonight. We really want to meet with our partner, Jocelyn Bedell from Student Affairs, who has a really great perspective on how graduate assistantships and how we really integrate graduate assistantships into our work here at VCU. So my name is Jenna Lenhart. I'm a recruitment specialist. You've probably gotten to know my name or met me in person multiple times. And so I work with all incoming students and students who are interested in our School of Education programs at VCU. And Jocelyn?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jocelyn Bedell. I'm the Special Assistant to our Senior Vice Provost for Student Affairs. So I'm a big partner to Jenna and all of you in helping you find practical experience during your education in student affairs, if that is a field of interest for you. And I just want to let you know that I do live out in the country, so my internet can sometimes be a bit delayed. Hopefully my audio is always consistent, but my video might be a little delayed. So my apologies up front for that. But thank you so much for coming this evening to this session. Jenna and I had a dream about 2 years ago that we would create some sort of more aligned process for you all as you come into the new graduate program experience with VCU, and also learn more about our Division of Student Affairs, where employment opportunities may be for grad students and beyond. So that is where this session originated. We at VCU, many of you have probably applied to a number of graduate programs, so you're probably learning about all different kinds of ways that schools, host their graduate students. At VCU, our Division of Student Affairs is 13 different departments. We are really the umbrella of experiences and support and resources for students beyond the classroom. So, of course, residential life and housing is one of our largest employers in our division. We also, support all of the student activities and campus involvement kinds of things. Counseling center, students accessibility and academic support are in our area, what used to be called disability support services. We've also got rec sports, all kinds of wellness resources. We have a RAMS and recovery program that's really unique as compared to many other campuses. So we are a leader in the space around students in recovery who are in college. So that's a really exciting office that we've got, and a number of other departments, and I'm probably forgetting them. But throughout my time at VCU, I've been here about 7 years. The history has been that the Division of Student Affairs has always wanted to be a good partner to the School of Ed, but we don't have a kind of seamless hiring or funding model. You'll find that at many other schools, but at VCU, it really is up to each department on campus to figure out if and how they can hire graduate students. So you'll find through our interview program that Jenna and I have created that there are a handful of departments within student affairs, and then also other great offices across VCU's campus who have the funding to hire graduate student employees. And really that hiring runs the gamut from hourly, part-time work to, some roles include some money for tuition. And once in a blue moon, you will find a true graduate assistantship where tuition is fully covered and you're paid a stipend or some sort of income for your work in that office. So at VCU, you really will see the gamut. Also, our full-time employees at VCU can access tuition remission. So if you work full-time for VCU, you can go to school for free so many credits a semester. So you will find that some of your classmates will actually be full-time VCU employees who are using that tuition benefit. So just another way to think about funding your education at VCU. But the Division of Student Affairs, a total of 250 full-time employees. Many of us have gone through our own master's in higher ed programs, many through VCU's program as well. But we are very committed to supporting your learning as a VCU student. So, you know, internships, externships, shadowing, all kinds of things can be invented and created during your time here. So please always feel free to reach out through Jenna or myself to learn more as you get to know what you need as well. And as you know, in higher ed, we are still shaping our course through this COVID pandemic. At VCU, we are not quite in a hiring freeze, but we are definitely in a hiring squeeze, let's say. And so we don't have full hiring back, but all of our offices have proposed, you know, what they need as far as graduate student hiring, and that is slowly getting approved through the various budget channels. And what we found last year is that we were able to hire almost all the grad students we needed with very little limitation, even during the tightest time of COVID. So I am very positive to let you know tonight that our offices who can hire are actually actively seeking new grad students right now. So welcome to VCU.
And find the right button. Thank you, Jocelyn. So when we reached out to, and it's actually Student Financial Services, suggestions from the Student Financial Services team specific to FAFSA. And for our international students, if you cannot complete the FAFSA, obviously that doesn't make any sense. There are a lot of scholarships, and I mentioned this in a previous video, that are open and do not require FAFSA. But for the students who are who can complete the FAFSA, there are a couple of different things. If your program starts in the summer, you may have eligibility of loans and access to things that are going to have to be in your FAFSA for 2021. So you would actually almost create a FAFSA for last year if you are summer, and then you would also create a FAFSA for this coming year for fall and spring and summer of the 2021-2022 academic year. So that was a suggestion that I thought was really helpful, and particularly as it relates to some financial aid. There's a need component that is considered in that area. And to be eligible for financial aid, direct, unsubsidized, and plus loans, a graduate student has to be enrolled at least half-time, or what that gets considered is 5 credits per semester, and that includes summer. So for many of my students who are military connected or using military benefits, there's also a need to be at a certain credit threshold. And so keep in mind to reach out to Military Student Services to ensure that you understand how many credits you need to be enrolled to then utilize specific benefits. So that's another consideration to keep in mind as it relates to thinking about financing your education and what opportunities you have for loans, and really putting together, I always say, this puzzle of support, because one year you may have no scholarship access, but you may be leaning more in on loans, or one semester, and then the next semester you may be putting together loans as well as a GA stipend, as well as, you know, something else that might come along. So always consider that what your financial aid or your funding picture is one semester may very well have the opportunity to change in the next semester if you keep your eyes open and you're also able to apply to new scholarships and those types of pieces. Keeping in mind also satisfactory academic progress. At the graduate level, we consider that a 3.0. So that will be different than what you experienced potentially if you're coming from an undergraduate program or other institutions, but our satisfactory academic progress is a 3.0. So speaking of scholarships and other aid, I talked a little bit about scholarships in my other video, but one of the larger sort of overarching scholarship websites is the VCUacademicworks.com. And this is actually a newer system for us as it relates to sort of consolidating scholarships in one space. And so School of Education also works through that process. You'll see more information on that and that whole process in Q&A and FAQs through our School of Education scholarships website, which is this link right here. Currently, students for School of Education scholarships are not eligible until you start taking classes. So keep that in mind is that you need to be enrolled in classes to apply for scholarships. Our scholarships process at the School of Education begins in the spring, every spring. Generally, it opens up, I want to say late February, early March, but I could be getting those dates wrong, and the updated information is on the website. For international students, one thing to consider is that almost all, if not all of our scholarships are available for international students in the School of Education, as well as on-campus employment is part and parcel of your student visa. So F1 student visa, you have eligibility to work in on-campus jobs. And so it doesn't really, you don't have to think about anything extra. You just have to work with the Global Education Office as you're being hired for the various different hiring paperwork processes that you'll need for HR, but they'll walk you through that whole process. So there are differences between School of Education scholarships, the full GA funding, which of course was due in January, and then GA opportunities across campus. So keep in mind, scholarships are for current students, so you have to be enrolled. Graduate funding, that what is sort of what Jocelyn talked about, is that fully funded. We're all due generally in January, and so those decisions have already been made, and so you would have heard about those. And then other graduate opportunities are our GA interview week that is happening next week. So if you applied for those, our hiring managers have all made decisions or are making decisions today. So you will receive emails per position that you were asked to move forward to the interview stage in the next 2 days. It should be either early tomorrow morning or early on Wednesday morning, depending on when we get the final decisions back from our employers. One thing about military student services that I want to highlight is that they are wonderful at looking up your eligibility. So if you have a question about, am I eligible? Can I use my benefits for this? What do I need to do in support? They can walk you through the process of being sort of certified for different eligibility for different support through military benefits. So please do not be shy. If you have any military benefits or using them, to reach out and engage that office. They're a wonderful team to support your success. There's also, and Jocelyn mentioned it earlier, employer support. So as VCU employees, we have a certain amount of tuition benefit as it relates to completing programs. And so that, along with, you may have employer support if you're a full-time employee at another institution, but also at another employer. And so I would always ask, are there benefits? Are there refunds if I get a certain grade? Always ask the question to your HR team and see if there's any professional development funding that can support your work as well. There's also the Metropolitan, wrong Merck, I'm sorry. The Minority Educator Recruitment and Retention and Equity Center, MERIC. MERIC is a newer center, and they actually have grant funding for minority future educators. And so if that is an area to which you need some book support, I don't believe it's full tuition, but there are different supports that are built into MERIC. And they have a whole funding part of their website that you can apply for support and financial aid as well. So those are a couple scholarship pieces and then other aid that I wanted to bring to your attention. And I promise I will answer all the questions that are coming through at the end. So student financial services contact and suggestions. So this is actually what came from that team. Is too often students are worried about having this conversation. I know many of you are actually anxious about it, so I don't think you're the worried ones. I think you'll definitely reach out. Keep in mind that there are a few different new updates to student financial services. They've centered a lot of the support network under one umbrella, from financial aid to billing, all under one space. And so the main website is updated and will be on this slide. If you have accepted your offer, you will then have access to what we call our Navigate system. Our Navigate system is a great system, particularly with our undergraduate students. In a lot of ways, they can set up their advising appointments. But for graduate students, you could set up an appointment with career services. You can also set up an appointment with your financial aid counselor that is specifically designated to you. And so that's really nice if you have accepted your offer. If you have not accepted your offer, you can always email the main student financial services email, and they can help you with any questions that you have as well.
And another resource to consider that is still ongoing for many of us at many campuses is additional support financial related to COVID-19 funds. The federal government has released another large package, as many of you know, that both included individual payments to many of us across the country, but also our campuses got another round of CARES funding. I think it had a new name, but the funding that went directly to higher ed institutions to support current students. So if you are a current student at any institution, check with your current financial aid office to see if there is some funding you qualify for right now to help you round out whatever program you're finishing up this semester, and perhaps could be a helpful bridge of funding as you transition into grad school. Once you are fully enrolled, you become a VCU student. The fall semester, or summer or fall, whatever it is for you individually, you will be able to work with our Student Financial Services Center to apply for any funding that VCU might still have. I do know that the funding from the federal government has been designated for current students. So the priority is always the current students at your institution. So as new to be VCU students, you'd be at the tail end of that list for this summer. But that's why I recommend check with your current institution if you're a current student, just in case there is some funding to help you close out any final bills or anything that might be related to your current college experience, so that you don't carry that forward into grad school as well. Is there anything else you'd add here, Jenna?
No, I think that's great. And I think one of the overarching components, and we're going to use the rest of the time to talk through slides as well as talk through questions, because between Jocelyn and I, mainly Jocelyn, she knows everyone across campus, and all of the sort of different ways in being creative about finding opportunities to fund your education. And so I'm going to stop sharing now and start answering the questions that have come into the chat. So great. Oh, I don't know. Oh, so K Young. I'm trying to remember your first name, K. I'm sorry. So newly accepted EDD student. Yes, absolutely. So this session is for all students coming into all of our programs. So when we mentioned earlier that say you are currently employed and going to continue staying employed, what are creative ways to fund your education, between loans, between employer support, between looking at various different scholarship opportunities that might be available, thinking about the funding your education as a full picture and as a puzzle versus thinking I have to get all of my finances paid for in one area. So I think that is the one thing, if I were to say to take out of today, is that funding your education is more of a continual process versus I'm going to figure it out and then it's going to be done. At least that was not my experience in education. I know many people that I have worked with, their experience in education was either they were employed by an institution and they used tuition benefits, or they had employer support, or they had a graduate assistantship. That was not my experience. I worked full time. I had to take out a combination of loans, but I also had scholarships. I had employer support. So I put a lot of puzzle pieces together, and I have the experience with a lot of our students is that is your experience as well. That maybe you have a graduate student worker position where that pays you certain hourly rate and it gives you experience. But then on top of that, you might also have a scholarship from a professional association that you work with. And then maybe down the line, you might get a research assistantship opportunity or teaching assistantship opportunity where you're paid for those pieces as well. So I think one of the biggest pieces in why Jocelyn and I are meeting with all of you tonight is thinking about being creative about how to fund your education and not just thinking it has to be one thing that pays for your whole education, if that makes sense. Nick, oh, did I miss? Nick, oh, you can schedule. Thank you, Nick.
No, thanks, Nick. We have an insider in the audience.
Yeah, I actually work in the Student Financial Management Center. And so I'm the direct counselor for the Wilder School and School of Social Work, but the direct financial counselor for the School of Education, her name is Chevy. She's phenomenal. definitely schedule an appointment with her. If you have any particular questions, she can also help you brainstorm about your particular situation. Because I mean, like they've been saying, it's really more of an individual. You have to get creative with how to fund it. Always a proponent of, if you can minimize loan debt, that's great. So utilize all the free resources. I know VCU has a lot more than most schools actually do. So when you do become eligible to apply for the scholarships internal to the school, do so. Doesn't matter if you're unsure if it's 50-50. It's better to just know that you've tried and you put your best foot forward versus miss an opportunity to help minimize loan debt. Because that's really when most people get into loan debt, is when they don't know what's going on. Yeah, so thought I'd just put my 2 cents in there.
Nick, we may ask you to come to the next one next year. That was great.
I've been doing it for a few years,
That's amazing, Nick. Thank you so much. And if you wouldn't mind adding the name of the person, and I know, again, folks can go through the navigate and things like that, is if you've accepted your offer, but it's great to have the name for the counselor, if that's helpful. Thank you so much. Perfect. I think if there was another question, any other questions that everyone has? I know you're here and a little bit anxious about the process. So what other questions can we answer for you?
Oh, if I can add in one more thing. For this upcoming summer, you're going to need to do the 2020-2021 FAFSA for aid consideration for this summer, just because the way financial aid operates, this is what I do. The way that financial aid operates, it operates off of a full financial aid year, where the beginning of the year is the fall and the end is actually the summer. So summer 2021 is still tied to the 2020-2021 aid year. That's why you're going to be doing 2 FAFSAs almost every year, because of just how the flow of classes work. Then on top of that, the next FAFSA becomes available October 1st, and it's due February 1st. So always put October 1st and February 1st as FAFSA important dates in your calendar for every single year for aid consideration.
Thank you, Nick. Gosh, and we didn't even know you were going to be here. This is great. Great bonus. So is it too late or the GA competitiveness? They are competitive, I will say. So but this year, our graduate assistantship positions, we have an incredible associate dean and an incredible director of finance who have worked creatively to identify the pool of money that we have from a university resource standpoint, as well as our centers do incredible amounts of grant work and research work. And so really trying to connect as many dots as we can to create unique opportunities for our graduate students. On top of that, what Jocelyn mentioned earlier is we have a GA interview week. And so we have 10 employers this year. Last year, we only had 7. Of course, it was the pandemic, of course, as well. But this year we have 10. And there are other opportunities that are outside of the GA interview week. So the nice part about the GA interview week is that those positions are prioritizing our students first, because they are generally positions that are student affairs or student leadership or educational leadership focused. And so they're wanting to give opportunities of experience and experiential opportunities, and really leverage from your experience in the work that they do. And so I think that is really exciting, to have almost an insider opportunity to meet with colleagues across campus, whether or not you decide to choose that position or not. That is a colleague that, like Jocelyn mentioned earlier, it has a vested interest in your success, because you're going to be a future colleague to them. And so I think that's what you'll see across VCU as well, as getting out there and networking is also a great idea to do your first semester and throughout your program, because you'd be surprised where hiring opportunities happen and what happens when you build out your network as much as you can when you're a student on campus.
Jenna, do you mind sharing screen power with me? Brittany, one thing I'll add to that your question, GA at VCU is a broad umbrella. So the most traditional, like fully funded graduate assistantships with tuition remission and stipend and all of that. I think, Jenna, you said that was kind of on lockdown by January. You had to have applied. Those have all been given out through School of Ed and the graduate school. Now we're in the time of hiring for basically graduate jobs, graduate student jobs across VCU. Depending on the department that's hiring, the funding can look very different. So right now, a number of student affairs departments are hiring basically part-time employees, but saved for graduate assistants that come with either hourly pay or a stipend for the school year. Cash in your pocket to be used as you will, but not direct tuition remission. Those are rare in the student affairs departments. But so GA across the board is a little different at VCU, but there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I want to just share my screen because there are a couple of sites I wanted to mention to you to keep up with throughout the next few months. I would even say as more jobs get added. So some departments are still figuring out their budgets for next year. They don't quite know their hiring ability quite yet. So we do have this landing page for just the Division of Student Affairs. So 13 units out of the entire university. So we're just a slice of employment on campus. But I do try to keep this website as up to date as I can with current hiring in our various departments. So one really important example I want to show you is residential life and housing. You'll see here there's like a teaser coming soon, right? I just double checked our VCU jobs website, and those jobs have just posted as of last week or something. So I will update my website, but you can always go to the VCU jobs. Graduate employment is added to the main VCU jobs page, just like full-time employment, just like any kind of work at VCU. So I highly recommend bookmark both of these websites for yourself over the next few weeks and just keep checking back because literally department upon department will continue to hire throughout the summer. And we don't always know. Jenna and I don't always know what's going on out there. So you have to keep up with it with us as well.
That's a great point, Jocelyn, and thank you for bringing that up because one of the other suggestions I have is if you have a department on campus that you would really love to work with. So say it's the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs or OMSA. Say it's the, oh goodness, Jocelyn, Student Accessibility, SAO, Student Accessibility and Educational Support or something. opportunities, SAO. So say it is, or the well, or say it's with Rams and Recovery. Say there is an area that really aligns with your professional passion and there is a student affairs office that works with that. Find them on social media and follow them because generally when they hire, they post something a lot of times on their social media, we're hiring or something like that. And it may be mid-semester. So keep in mind that some of these opportunities, particularly as they relate to grants, we may not know we have grant funding for an opportunity until that grant agency gives us the green light. And that does not align always with when academic semester starts. So keep that in mind as well, is that to be definitely follow as much as you can School of Education and then any other departments on campus that you are really passionate about potentially working with as well. Is Nick still on the call? I think he is. So Nick, can students still apply for last year's financial aid? I believe the answer is yes, but I wanted to make sure I checked with you.
Oh, yes. Essentially, the 2020-2021 FAFSA remains available until June 30th. So if you want financial aid for this summer, I would say do it today. It'll take you, because we don't need, because you're a graduate student, you're considered independent, so we don't need any parent information when you fill it out, just your information. And in truth, graduate federal financial aid is non-need based. So grad students will receive the same type of funding as always the unsubsidized loan. The max you'll see in a semester is $20,500. And of course, I put a little asterisk right there because it does depend on what your aggregate limit is like, or more so how much you have left. The aggregate limit for graduate students is $138,500. So if you've taken out loans before, they're looking at all total loans you've taken out, namely subsidized and unsubsidized loans that you've taken out in your tenure in higher education. And so if you're close to that, we'll notify you about that. If you're not, you'll be perfectly fine. So I guess sort of anticipate a lot of movement financial aid wise. If you've done the 2020, 2021 FAFSA, you'll get an award for summer. But then if you've also done the 2021, 2022 FAFSA, you'll get an award sometime closer to June, about mid-June is when that should come in. And that award will be split between the fall and the spring. So that's why you have to make sure that you're always gonna be doing 2 different FAFSAs each school year because of the summer session always being integrated into the flow of how the program is.
Thank you, Nick. So I think Avni, you asked the question, how can we apply for the full GA for the following academic year, January 2022? I think if I'm understanding your question, you're asking if you did not get selected this year, or you did not apply for this year, how do you apply for the GA ships next year? It's the same exact process. You have to apply by the January 10th, submit the application that is on our website, and you are integrated into the request process. What I usually suggest though for students, because generally our full, what we call graduate assistantship, so tuition and stipend included, those are generally for our full-time PhD students who do not generally have any work outside of that support. And so just keep that in mind. That's why they are very limited, is because they are quite full packages as it relates to the support. So what I usually suggest for continuing PhD students or continuing students in general is, again, stay up to date with your faculty mentor, professional associations, and other avenues to supporting your program, because again, those are very competitive, and they usually are assigned for multi-year whenever we can. How do TA opportunities work with funding, and how can positions be found on full-time doctorate incoming students? So Rima, I think I understand your question is how to identify TA opportunities. Those will usually be built into a graduate assistantship opportunity, or if you share that you are interested in doing a TA or interested in adjunct teaching, depending on your background, depending on your experience and what you are able to teach, then your faculty coordinator and the chair of your department will be wonderful people to have a conversation with, and just to share your resume and to share that you are interested as they are building out the schedules. For instance, the first time I was able to teach, it was a colleague in my cohort who needed somebody to teach a remedial class at a community college. And I was towards the end of my master's program, and I was able to support that request. So a lot of times it's also making sure that you are sharing your interest, and then sharing it often with the people who are in your network who can then support. Oh, hey, I heard, that Brittany said that she wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and she's got a background in this. Or same thing with grant proposals. A lot of times it's this, one of my students has said that they're really interested in doing this. This is, an opportunity that's come up. I'm going to connect the dots and help them identify that as a support opportunity. Jocelyn, anything else that you wanted to add?
I know there's a number of folks on here who are going to be full-time PhD and EDD students. That's awesome. And I'm guessing, Nick, you're probably using your employee tuition remission, I'm guessing.
Absolutely.
To make this happen. Excellent. So beyond funding, if you are just interested in professional experience throughout your academic time, it might be that you would like to build in some sort of internship or externship or shadowing that's a little more informal. We don't do any official hiring for that through student affairs, but through one-off conversations and connections. Let's say you're very interested in learning more about wellness on a college campus and how do we do wellness education and outreach. I'm always happy to connect you with my colleagues in the different departments who might be able to then craft with you a project-based limited time experience that helps you meet an educational goal, but isn't tied to funding, isn't tied to maybe even it might not even be for course credit, but it's because you just want to expand your professional repertoire. Sometimes it's hard to figure that out when you're a full-time employee or a full-time grad student, but you want to sort of spread your wings. So please know you can always reach out to me. And if you forget who I am, reach out to Jenna. She'll get you to me. And we can build those kind of experiential opportunities as you go.
And if I can add in, it's those kind of opportunities that are really unique, the networking piece, that can often lead to different kinds of funding opportunities that may come up, whether it be you're invited to a conference, a professional conference to maybe present, like NASPA or something of that nature, which can lead to maybe some scholarships or even a leadership position in different kind of ways. But it could also lead to job opportunities, whether at VCU or even at another institution. I always say take advantage of those both formal and informal opportunities to network, because that's really where funding is always in the handshake. It's never at the big, conference where you're going through an interview. It's literally through the informal ways, whether it's through pizza, sometimes a cookout, sometimes just over coffee. So take advantage of those opportunities. That's really what's going to help you expand a bit, especially as we get closer to the dissertation phase. It's going to be crucial to have a good network who may know certain data that we may need for the projects that we're going to be working on. So just my 5 cents.
Yeah, Nick, I thank you so much for saying that, because I do think that our network at VCU is, in my mind, one of our incredible differentiators. We care deeply about helping each other succeed. And so one of the pieces is, though, you've got to tell us what you need. And so to a certain point, there is a component of a partnership that has to go back and forth, is start asking questions. There's never, if somebody can't help you, then we will help you find the person who can. As large of a university as we are, we do really have quite a tight network and a support system that I think is integrated really well into the programs. One of the other components that I want to say is, don't forget, and Nick, you made me think of this, is your professional associations. A lot of times they have student discounted rates, and then they have scholarships or various different support opportunities. And that networking opportunity can sometimes lead to really interesting opportunities for both, employment, but then also payment and support as well. And there are funding opportunities through the graduate school to attend conferences, as well as, other opportunities through the graduate school for professional development. So that's another component. And we'll talk about that a little bit more at the welcome session on Friday. So please make sure you RSVP to the welcome sessions that are happening on Friday. We will go over a lot of other information and resources. It's just a big resource week this week for everybody. One other component is particularly for teachers in under-resourced or high need schools, as well as teachers in specific disciplines. So STEM, special education, usually early childhood, is always usually on the TEACH grant. And so again, there are limitations and eligibility components to some of the federally funded grant opportunities, but those are on our School of Education financial aid and scholarships website that I highly suggest you go through and look at some of the federal grant and federal aid support opportunities. There's sort of for loan forgiveness for certain teachers as well. So I know we have a blend of certificate, teaching, doctoral students in both PhD and our EDD programs. So again, your picture, like Nick mentioned earlier, is going to look different depending on your needs and your specific situation. So please, I hope this was helpful. And please remember to reach out at any time. Jocelyn and myself and Chevy, thank you, Nick, for sharing, are part of your team of support as you move forward in your program. So are there any final questions as it relates to funding your education that we can help answer tonight?
And I put a link in the chat that could be really, really useful. Don't forget, you're going to be a student. So there's a lot of different benefits, like Amazon Prime. You can get the student discount because normally it costs an arm, a leg, and sometimes an eye. But it can really just cost you a finger under the student discount, and it lasts for a while. So So take advantage of that. And also you can get cheaper, you can get your books cheaper, faster shipped to you. Also things like check.com, sometimes at restaurants as well. So take advantage of just the title of being a student. Um, so check out that link. Those are creative ways to also minimize controllable costs like books and supplies, travel costs. And do look for those opportunities if you are traveling to conferences of ways to maybe pay for your plane ticket or your hotel. That's why the network is so important to really utilize for those kind of opportunities. You never know until you. I learned that hard lesson when I was in my master's program at UVA. I didn't ask enough questions, and I learned when I started working in financial aid. If you just ask, you never know what's going to come out. So
That's perfect, Nick. And I'm so glad you said that because I actually just went on my Geico app yesterday and they had this like marketing, whatever it might be. And it said, your affiliation, and VCU was in there. And I said, well, and then I saved like $60 over the course of 6 months. I'm like, well, there you go. So thank you, Nick. That's absolutely, it's those small things add up and absolutely maximize your student status to your benefit as much as you can. Melissa, yes.
Jenna, you muted yourself by accident, just FYI.
Oh, I don't know how I did that. So the Teach Grant, Melissa, is for financial aid and scholarship. But if you go under there as well, you'll see if you're MT and going into the STEM fields, there's a NOIS scholarship as well. So there are, depending on, again, where you're going, what program you're in, where you want to teach or work, will then determine what opportunities you have. And again, I think Chevy is going to be a great resource for you through the financial student services team, who are clearly amazing. And Nick, next year, we're totally going to ask Chevy to come. And you set a high bar.
Oh, I told her to be prepared. I didn't tell you guys, I'm the lead financial counselor. So she's one of the, so I will, this is just me 24/7. So I can't wait to meet many of you guys in person soon. I cook as well. So.
Oh, thank goodness. See, use that network, Nick, that's great. Okay. Any other questions that Jocelyn, Nick, or I can answer for you?
Well, this is Ashley too. I just wanted to ask a quick question to you. I was wondering, Ms. Jenna, if you're available a couple minutes, like after the event. I just wanted to ask a specific question that's like related to my admission status. I was wondering if,
Yep, I got your message, Rabia. If you can email me, we can set up a time later this week, okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions as it relates to financial aid that might be good for the general team?
Yes, Jenna, you mentioned about grants for teachers who are looking to work in at-risk communities, and I'm wondering, do all of these benefits that you guys have mentioned, like I heard you guys mention PhD students and teachers often, does this all apply to counselor educators as well?
So Alton, it depends. So the Teach Grant is specific to high needs, I would say teachers generally, but high needs educators in high needs schools. So special education teachers, STEM educators, early childhood. One of the suggestions that I would have is actually to go through the CAPE website, Alton, because our program is a CAPE associated counselor education program. They may have scholarships that they suggest through CAPE, and even CAPE might. I'm not actually sure. I haven't looked at that page recently, but that would be a good association for you to kind of know about, as well as depending on what counselor, if you're school counseling, couples and family, or in higher ed sort of student affairs, there will be different associations that would be your professional association specifically that may then again have scholarships in that area as well. It's a great question.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'm sure you will have more after tonight. I know that for everybody, it's very different. your specific financial aid puzzle is going to look different than somebody who's sitting next to you. And so know that that's okay. And I know that also that can be anxiety ridden. So know that you have a support network to talk with you specifically about your specific situation and give you tips and tricks to make this possible and to minimize your debt as much as you can, or eliminate it altogether. So I know if we have any RTR students on this call, that is a grant funded program that is specific to, of course, districts in the area. And so knowing about, of course, Merrick that has resources and support that is for across programs, and just thinking about how do I ask the right questions and ask them often, stay in the loop. Again, social media is really helpful, and know that we are here to support your success. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Nick, for being our guest, our guest tonight. And then Jocelyn, thank you so much. Your success is incredible, and thank you for partnering. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to close out our meeting, and we will hopefully have this posted up on our YouTube channel within the next couple of days. And I will send out the slides as well as the presentation recording. And if you have any other questions, of course, we're here to help. And I hope to see everybody on Friday.
I had one other question.
Oh, yes.
Sorry about that. Does any of the TEACH grants apply to current administrators?
Current administrators. Tell me a little bit more.
So in my situation, I only taught for 3.5 years, and I taught at one school. And then I became an administrator in the public school system. But I was under the impression that I lost the ability to have those to apply for the TEACH grants because I'm now in the classroom.
You know, so what I would suggest is let's have you reach out to Chevy to start that conversation, because she will know a lot more about the limitations of the TEACH grant as well as the eligibility components, because I think it depends on where you're also hoping to work and teach afterwards.
Yeah.
And so please feel free to use those links that we shared earlier to reach out and set up an appointment with her.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you again so much, and I hope you have a great night.
Jenna, you said CAPE?
Yep, CAEP. Bye.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.